Hello my friends! Before we begin this review, I would like to give you a special wonder effect of my own to celebrate this Switch 2 edition of a game that's all about surprises. And that's that I found a clip of Charles Martinet back before he was the Mario Ambassador saying "Wowie Zowie." And if you can guess where it's from without looking it up, then you're officially almost as much of a nerd as me. So, enjoy!
Wowie zowie!
Silly audience, that wasn't Charles Martinet, that was me! April Fools! But in all seriousness, I actually do have a clip of Charles Martinet saying "Wowie Zowie." And, as I said before the gag, if you know where this is actually from, this time no joke, you are officially almost as much of a nerd as me. So enjoy the actual Charles Martinet saying "Wowie Zowie."
Wowie zowie!
Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'll be reviewing for you Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 Edition plus Meetup in Bellabel Park. Since I've already reviewed the original Super Mario Bros. Wonder, you can default to that video if you want to hear my thoughts on the game as a whole. This review is mainly going to be talking about the changes made to the Switch 2 Edition, and if it's worth paying $20 if you already own Super Mario Bros. Wonder, $80 if you want both the original game and the DLC, or just rent it like I did. Let's start with some of the smaller changes before we get into the big ones. First off, there's now an assist mode where any character can take on the characteristics of Nabbit, who in the original game could only be killed if he fell into a pit or if an auto-scroller caught up to him. Now, if any character falls into a pit, that character will be teleported back via a propeller flower, and the character also won't be damaged by enemies. Whether this can be turned on a character-per-character basis, so that, say, maybe a younger child can have a handicap, I don't know. I was not able to test this. It does make me wonder, though, why is this only in the Switch 2 edition? And if you're wondering, well, why didn't you test it in the Switch 1 version? There is an option to switch over to the Switch 1 version, and when I did, that option was nowhere to be found. So, very, very odd to lock an easy mode behind a paywall just because people don't want to play as Nabbit. Patrick Seitz has now re-recorded all of the Talking Flowers lines to replace Mick Wingert. I personally have a soft spot for Mick Wingert just because I really liked the Wonder Flowers in the original game. I can see why some people would find them annoying, but I feel like if it had just been a one-off gag, like in Mario Wonder, and then it wasn't revisited, I would have been happy. But if you really miss Mick's performance, then that's another reason why the menu of the Switch 2 edition allows you to just reboot up the Switch 1 version. Sure, you won't get all the extra features and the resolution will be slightly worse, but if you're playing it on a Switch 2 to begin with, it'll still look better by virtue of the Switch 2's backwards compatibility boosting. So if you're just a sucker for those old voices, you still have an option, you just can't do it with all the extra stuff. There are two new characters that you can play as. There's Rosalina, who is literally identical to all of the regular characters, just now it's Rosalina, still played by Laura Faye Smith, and she still sounds wonderful. There's also Luma, who is a bit of an odd exception, because it acts kind of like the co-star mode in the Super Mario Galaxy games. Now, I didn't get a chance to test this out, but from what I've heard from my friends that have, it's basically exactly the same as in those games. You pick up coins and can stun enemies and the like. And you can even use mouse mode to move around the cursor. There's a new power-up called the Flower Suit, where your character looks like a walking flower, can hover in the air for a couple of seconds, and also create flower platforms. Now, just in case you're mistaking this with the Cloud Flower in Super Mario Galaxy 2, the difference here is that these flowers will automatically fly straight up, and they will destroy any enemies or obstacles in your way. So it's great if there are, say, enemies hanging from the ceiling that drop things on you, that you want to quickly get rid of them. There are some new badges that you can unlock, but don't get excited about too many of them. Literally all of them except for one are just taking existing badges from the main game and combining two effects together, like the spin jump and the parachute cap that activate at the same time. The one badge that is completely brand new is kind of a bit of a letdown and is very iterative of other existing badges. I think you can infer what I'm talking about, but just in case you can't, don't think that it's quite as amazing as the badge that you get for 100% completion, which I did 100% complete Mario Brothers Wonder. That badge was way more worth it than all of the new ones in this game. But at least you have to work for them. So I can say it's nice that you have to earn these new achievements as opposed to them just being given to you. Since this is the Switch 2 edition, obviously the performance and the resolution have been increased. I wouldn't say greatly increased, because the original game looked and played fantastic. Even on Switch 1 it ran at 60 frames per second and had by far the most gorgeous art style and most detailed animations of any side-scrolling Mario to date. This version mainly focuses on the resolution, so everything looks quite a lot more detailed. Like when you're seeing waving grass in the first world, it seems like more blades of grass are visible. The colors on the characters' outfits are way more vibrant, like Luigi's green hat feels really green. The characters seem like they're more in focus, like they contrast a lot more with the backgrounds, and everything is just sharper and shinier, but not drastically sharper and shinier. Again, at the title screen, you can switch over to the Switch 1 version, and I didn't notice any glaring differences between the two, besides that Mick Wingert voiced the talking flowers. So I would say, if you're only getting this for the performance, which, again, why would you, considering what we're about to talk about, you're not going to get a huge, drastic difference, like, say, what you would have with Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. But now that we're past the tiny little additions, let's get into the major part, which is where the Plus Meetup in Bellabel Park comes in. After you get past the first 3 levels of Pipe Rock Plateau, which is this game's World 1, you'll see a portal that appears that if you pay 3 Wonder Seeds, you'll be able to be transported to an entirely new world called Bellabel Park. You'll first see a cutscene showing the Koopalings arriving and stealing a bunch of Bellabel flowers. And then you'll do a quick boss battle where they're just all inside this giant contraption. And then after that, you'll get into the park and you'll be able to run around in this semi-3D top-down perspective, just like you would on the regular world maps, to see all the various new features that Bellabel Park has to offer. There's the Toad Brigade training missions, which are these bite-sized challenges where you have to do very specific objectives, like collecting all the coins, defeating all the enemies, or the opposite, don't collect any coins. These are reminiscent of the challenge stages in New Super Mario Bros. U, and are quite a lot of fun, even if they are very, very strict. Like in New Super Mario Bros. U, you could get bronze, silver, and gold medals, but this does not allow you to make any mistakes. When it says collect every coin, you better bet you have to collect every single coin. If you're one short, the game is not going to forgive you for it. Unfortunately, these missions weren't quite as much fun as anything in the base game, because they were just remixes of existing levels. It felt like it missed the point of what made Super Mario Bros. Wonder so special, which was, well, the Wonder Flower. What I loved about Super Mario Bros. Wonder was every time you entered a level, not only would you see new enemies and new ideas to make the side-scrolling Mario games more fresh, but once you picked up the Wonder Flower, something incredible would happen to make the level radically transform or make your character radically transform. And in these, you don't really get any of them. A couple of missions have you take on new forms, like a flying shoe, a roller skate, and a ball, but it just doesn't have the same appeal when you start out in that form as soon as you start the level, and the level description flat out tells you what it's going to be before you even try it. If you like revisiting a lot of these iconic levels with new challenges, I guess this would be for you, but personally, I was kind of expecting more. I think completionists will be happy that you get different stamps for doing well in these levels, and those will unlock new levels. And completing the missions will give you Bellabel water, which will allow you to water plants in the plaza, which we'll get to in a bit. and you can earn extra Bellabel water if you either beat your record, beat the mission for a first time, or get to the top of a flagpole. As far as what Bellabel water does, they're used to water sprouts throughout the park. If you try to water a sprout individually, it's only 5 drops of water. But eventually you'll find these fountains that can water several flowers at once, and that'll cost 40 drops. This is basically this game's gotcha machine, as you can acquire quite a variety of prizes from these plants, but you're never really given a guarantee of what you're gonna get. Sometimes you might even get stuff that you already got. But just to name a couple of things, you can get new greetings that you can use above the player's head to communicate with others if you don't have game chat. There are instruments that if you collect all of them, then the Poplins will hold a special concert and it'll be the credits for this DLC, which is extremely stupid. Like, why lock credits behind gambling, essentially? Again, you're not using real money, but still, I feel like a better reward would have been, like, beating the Koopalings. But no, you have to add another unnecessary step just for the stinking credit scene. You can also unlock decorations, which you can use to make the park prettier or change it to different designs, like making the bushes blue instead of green. Circling back over to the Koopalings, how you access them is that there will be a Poplin that'll tell you where Captain Toad's tent is on each world map, and then when you visit him, you'll be taken to an existing level that each Koopaling has taken over. This means that the Koopaling will take on a brand new form that's never before been seen due to the power of wonder, and then the level itself will also radically transform as you chase the Koopaling to the battle arena. So for example, in the first battle against Wendy, you'll go through piranha plants on parade again, but this time you'll have Cheeps jumping out of portals at random intervals, and the color of the background will be a bit different. And then, once you get to the battle, you'll face off against the Koopalings with a lot of these wonder effects interfering with the battle. Honestly, I really liked these levels quite a lot, as the designs were really creative, and I liked being able to see new special gimmicks. Unfortunately, these are the only new levels in the game. And they aren't even new. They're just existing levels with new gimmicks added to them. And the gimmicks themselves, while cool in the fights, are kind of just iterations of what we've already seen in the main game. Like, we've seen Cheeps before, but now they come out of portals. Like, that's not cool. What about stuff like the crawling warp pipes or the Hoppos turning big? You know, the cool stuff like that. While it is nice that Nintendo is experimenting with new designs for the Koopalings and its existing characters, if the flower suit is any indication, I personally wanted brand new levels with more Wonder Flower effects. But again, I guess that's too much to ask for. Now initially this was where my review period stopped. And I said, you're telling me that all I'm getting are 2 new characters, one of which plays exactly the same as the regular characters. Another one you only control a cursor for. You get a stinking new power-up, a bunch of badges that are iterative of existing badges, and missions? Did this game completely forget about what made Super Mario Bros. Wonder special? But then, I had the opportunity to start playing with friends, and my perspective radically changed. Now there is a caveat to that, but let's get to the positives first. And that's that Bellabel Park has an entire second part of it called Attraction Central, where you can either play local multiplayer with someone who's in the room with you, or a game room, which you either have to join with friends online, or have friends near you that have individual Switch 2s. Unfortunately, you can't play with random people, which is a thing in the main game. You can play multiplayer in the regular levels, but these minigames just don't work like that. I do think it's unfortunate that this $20 DLC is demanding more money just to pay online, and even more than that if you want game chat. But let's get into the minigames themselves. You might be initially disappointed to hear that this section of the park is also separated into multiple areas, one of them being the local multiplayer section and the other being game room. Initially, I thought that this was super stupid. Like, why are you being so exclusive to people that maybe only have friends that live far away? And so maybe they don't have siblings or people that are close by. But these local multiplayer minigames, which I unfortunately did not get footage for, make a good case for why they need to be local multiplayer, because being able to coordinate and talk to each other is not only a good thing, but it is absolutely essential. My favorite one was where my friend Mike got to place donut blocks on the course with mouse mode, and I was trying to get to the end of the course. And as it got harder on, we really had to coordinate, like, okay, this is how high I can jump, so put the blocks here so that I can make this jump while avoiding a bunch of rising poison water. Yes, we did beat the final level of that, and I felt super proud of ourselves. There were also split up between cooperation and versus. And these versus battles were, pretty fun. I'm normally more of a fan of cooperation than I am competition, so I vastly preferred the cooperation games. But I would say that these were the best part of the experience. There's just something about being in the same room as someone, and it also helps that both of us are relatively soft-spoken, so we weren't hollering and screaming like some of my other friends might do when they were playing together. But we still high-fived each other, and even though I've 100%ed Mario Wonder and he had never played it before then, we both brought some unique experiences to the game. And we felt like we were pretty neck and neck whenever we did compete. So it was nice that both of our perspectives allowed for the game to have such a unique feeling to it. Now onto the game room section. And this is where I'd like to shout out thanks to my friend Matthew, who supported me on Patreon for many years, and he goes by the name of Nontoxic, and he did give me permission to share his friend code in the description if you want to go follow him. Any links to any of his other socials will also be provided, and he was able to help me test out the game room minigames. Unfortunately, these weren't even close to being as much fun as the local multiplayer ones, as all of them except for one were just races in various forms, and the one that wasn't a race was just Phanto Tag, which was already in the local multiplayer section. So it's like, there's only one minigame that carries over? That is so insanely stupid. Like, you'd think there would be more of an effort to have unity between the two types of players. We had a good time with these minigames, but they were kind of like, once we were finished with them, we didn't really have too much incentive to try them again. Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 editions had some decent attractions for single players with some neat Koopaling battles and a couple of neat training missions, but that's all they really were, was just neat. The credit scene was locked behind basically gambling, and the multiplayer games were fun, but you really have to have the right crowd just to play them. And I feel like that's kind of sleazy on the part of Nintendo, because you're already charging $20 for the expansion, and then you need to either pay $20 a year or $50 a year just to access more than half of the new content in this collection. So I think it was Nintendo's way of saying we actually wanted to charge more than $20, so pay up on that Switch Online subscription so that you can have even more features rather than having all of them on the game cart, which in my opinion is kind of despicable. So as I mentioned earlier, this costs $20 if you already have the game, or $80 if you just want the full package. Now what I did, as you're probably sick of hearing by now, is I rented the Switch 2 edition, which meant that it already came with the DLC included on the card. And while I do think that this is worth keeping if you have really good friends that you can have lots of laughs with, because there are multiple different courses for each minigame. As someone who doesn't get to play multiplayer games all the time, I felt like the main game was better in just about every way. Like, if I really wanted to go back to Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I would not do the attractions in the Switch 2 edition. I would just go straight back to the main game and just either race through the levels or play them in multiplayer there. Because, again, Super Mario Bros. Wonder was built on the premise of revisiting this idea of discovery. You have no idea what's going to happen if you pick up a Wonder Flower. You're like, oh wow, these are some crazy wacky enemies that I've never seen before. And just about everything in this DLC content is just recycled from the main game, or it's given a slight twist in a new way, but it's still overly iterative of what the original has to offer. So I would say Super Mario Bros. Wonder is a wonderful game that unfortunately kind of loses its replay value a bit after you know what the Wonder Effect is, but it's definitely an amazing rental. I 100%ed it to put into perspective how amazing it was. But this DLC, just ask yourself, do I want to play a handful of fun minigames, or do you think the main game is fun enough that I can save myself the $20? If you don't have Switch Online, then absolutely not. It's really not worth it, unless you really miss those challenge stages from New Super Mario Bros. U. But even then, they're ridiculously persnickety, so if you don't like the idea of having a bronze or silver medal, you might not like these too much here. And the Koopaling battles, while fun, I wouldn't say are essential. It's basically just damage control for people who didn't like the boss battles in the original game. While I had a good time, I'm definitely going to send this back as soon as I finish playing one more round with my friend Tyler. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I hope you have a wonderful Easter. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!